China, the world's second-largest economy, is getting back to work as it wraps up its fight against COVID-19. What picture does the latest economic data paint? And the top U.S. intelligence agency says COVID-19 was not man-made or genetically modified, but Trump is still pushing his lab theory against the evidence. Why won't the Trump administration quit peddling its conspiracy theories? Welcome to The Point, coming to you from Beijing. I'm Wang Cong, sitting in for Liu Xin. After a 3-month lockdown amid the COVID-19, China is finally back in business. What is the state of China's economic recovery? Is it as good as the official numbers suggest? What are some of the challenges? For some insight, I'm joined by Professor Josef Mahoney from East China Normal University, currently in Memphis, Tennessee, and via Skype by Wang Cong, chief reporter from the Global Times. Professor Mahoney, I want to start with you. First of all, your assessment on the state of the Chinese economy and how it has coped with a 3-month lockdown and quarantine.
Well, I think the first thing that we're seeing, as you have noted, is a gradual return to work. As you noted, I'm in Memphis, but I'm deeply connected to a lot of people there, and I have been seeing images and reports from a lot of my colleagues, friends, and whatnot, that things are slowly, not necessarily returning to normal. You know, people still have to get their temperature checked and wear their masks and whatnot, but slowly going back. But I think, you know, we're going to see 3 different stages here. The first was the initial domestic shock. Now we have to cope with the collapsing global demand. And then, you know, the third will be future uncertainties as the fallout continues to ripple vis-a-vis new forms of competition, the potentiality of decoupling between the 2 largest economies, the United States and China. So things are on the upturn, I think, but there's still a lot of uncertainty at work.
All right, Wang Cong in Beijing, back in 2009, the financial crisis, there were debates about the side effects of China's massive monetary stimulus. How do you assess China's monetary and fiscal policies this time around in response to COVID-19?
Very, very different, Wang Guan. If you noticed, because back in 2009, China, issued a massive stimulus plan that, kept the manufacturing sector going, and then by extension, that keeps the global demand for everything from raw material to everything to keep going. And many actually international experts said China's investment back then saved the global economy. And then this time around, we have seen a more targeted and measured efforts from the central government. For example, we haven't seen the massive stimulus into the infrastructure projects we saw in the 2008 and 2009 financial crisis. What we've seen is a lot of focus on the consumption end of the economy, because if you and I know that consumption is the biggest part of the China's economic growth. Over the past couple of years, it contributes about 60 to 70% of growth. So everything in China this time around, it's about consumption, consumption, consumption. And how do they do that? They issue small loans to small businesses, and then taxes. And also, we have seen many local governments have issued, consumption coupons to stimulate consumption. And also, I want to bring, because we're at the Labor Day holiday, this is very, very important for both the Chinese economy and in terms of the fight against COVID-19. First, because this is the first major long holiday we have after the COVID-19. This is a test to see if consumers are comfortable enough to go out and spend. If we see more people going out, as I saw today, I went to see a house, because my colleague want to buy a house, and a lot of the renovations, a lot of these projects are coming back. Also, consumers are coming back, but also there's also the concern that if there will be a resurgence of the COVID-19, so after this holiday, we'll see a fuller picture of the recovery and also how effective China has been in containing that resurgence or that epidemic.
Sure. We're waiting to see how things progress in the coming weeks and months. Professor Mahoney, can we expect more fiscal and monetary stimulus from China's annual parliamentary sessions, the National People's Congress, starting May the 22nd?
Well, I think my colleague, he was on the mark that what's happening now is very different from what happened in 2008, and I think it's fair to say, as he said, that the huge stimulus and loans that especially went to state-owned enterprises and infrastructure projects in 2008 did do a lot to save the global economy in 2008, and that they're not being done now for a couple of reasons, maybe three reasons. The first is China doesn't have the capacity to do that much infrastructure investment. They don't need that much infrastructure investment anymore. And secondly, part of the longstanding structural reform is to try to reform the state-owned enterprises, get rid of toxic debts, not flood the economy with too much money quickly, as some concerns related to 2008 or 2009 show. So, as he said, there is this effort to be more responsible and to play things out a little more slowly, to manage it a little bit better, and I think that's very, very smart. And the government has much improved their macro controls and their capacity to do this since 09, 08. But in terms of what we might see from the two sessions, I think what we'll see is an endorsement of the policies that have been undertaken so far. I think we'll see a new raft of policies. Above all, this will, I think, continue to emphasize protecting lives, saving lives. There are lingering concerns of a second or third wave of COVID-19, and this will be difficult to prevent altogether, but clearly that will remain a priority. Also, as was noted, the need to save SMEs, small, medium-sized enterprises, is a critical step at this point, as well as spurring domestic consumption. But in addition to this, I would hope that, despite the fact that we're seeing and will continue to see relatively low fixed asset investment, I would hope to see, again, I think what some analysts are expecting, some tremendous investment in 5G, and above all, China's semiconductor production capacity. I think these are massive drivers for the future. I think they have immediately realizable benefits, and I hope that those are foremost in the minds of policymakers, as well as any sorts of reforms that need to be addressed towards the education sector.
Sure, we see a booming of the digitization. Companies are working smarter, leaner, and also the e-commerce. Wang Cong, can you break things down for us? I mean, in response to this epidemic, where are the bright spots, and what are the sectors that might take longer to rebound in China?
Before that, I just want to add a little bit to what the professor said about the two sessions. Foreign media often dismiss the two sessions as a rubber stamp, event. But if you're looking at Chinese economy, this is the most important event you have to watch out for. Specifically this year, there are two things that I think that will be on the table for lawmakers and advisors to discuss. First is a plan to increase the government's deficit. Right now, the government's fiscal deficit is about 2-3%. There's discussions about increasing that to even 5-6%. They're different, and where that goes, also the professor noted, there haven't been a lot of investment into the traditional infrastructure we saw in 2008, 2009. But there's this new concept. It's called a new infrastructure. That's including 5G, big data, AI, high-speed rail. So we will see if that deficit will increase, and that will boost the investment side of the things a little bit more. And another big plan on the table is that a special government bond that could be totaling over 1 trillion yuan because that is a special government bond. It doesn't come into the deficit or the budget. So it has to be approved by the National People's Congress. So that's also another big plan on the table. With regard to the different sectors, how they cope with the COVID-19, I think yes, if you ask any official or any experts, you will say throughout this epidemic, we have seen unprecedented challenges for many sectors, including manufacturing, and infrastructure projects. However, if you follow what's going on in China, every day I've been just recently starting to watch these live stream shows because that's how they do business. Because consumers are not out there on the streets to buy, so where do they go? They go online. So they use these platforms like Douyin, like Kuaishou. They use this to promote products from different parts of the country. We saw celebrities join the efforts to promote products from Hubei, and also this brings the business because that's where the Chinese economy headed anyway, more digitalized. So just today I spoke to a friend of mine inside Kuaishou. That's a short video platform. This year alone, they will double their staff of 10,000 already. So those are the bright spots, we see, like new emerging markets, new emerging sectors coming along. That's what also, going back to the 2003-2004 SARS epidemic, that's where China's online shopping sector took off. So we are seeing some bright spots going on in terms of e-commerce, live streaming. But what could be the hardest will be the manufacturing sector, because as the professor noted before, it was the shutdowns, the efforts to contain the epidemic. Now they're saying canceled orders from overseas because the virus went spread through across the world. So they're saying some are saying even cancellations of existing orders, let alone new orders. So that's going to take a lot of time to recover, and that would depend on the global pandemic, not just in China.
Well, Wang Cong, you talk about the importance of consumption, but the reality is stores across China have reopened, but consumers, at least some of them, have not returned. And there are joblessness. I mean, people lost their jobs, have their pay cuts, becoming a reality. Aside from shopping vouchers, what else do you think the government can do to prop up domestic demand?
Unemployment, that's very important. For the last couple of weeks, we've been covering the unemployment issue. Because, think about it, in the first quarter, China's GDP shrank 6.8%. But for the government, for the Chinese government officials, experts, the ones I've been talking to, that's not on their mind because they know that there will be a rebound. Unemployment issue, however, is what keeps them alive, keeps them awake at night. Because this is not about economic alone. It's also about social stability. China is a massive country with a massive labor force, and also we've seen over the past couple of years that there are more jobs in high-paying jobs. However, a lot of migrant workers, they're about I think the size of UK. My colleague found out that are actually didn't earn any penny, a single penny in the first quarter because the manufacturing factories they worked for were shut down, and also now they can't find it. So what's important here is what I hear the most, that first they have to focus on the small businesses because those are the biggest employees in China. Right. Those are the companies who hire all these employees. That's why we're seeing trillions of yuan in tax cuts, in financial support, loans to this small business. So that's very important. Once we get those small businesses back, those jobs will come back. And also another different thing is, I just last point that between China and the U.S., we've seen that there's some 26 million people out of jobs in the United States. In China, there are also, similar number because, the official data and different estimates.
Well, talking about that, Wang Cong, I hate to interrupt you, but I want to give our friend in the U.S. a chance to comment on that. The jobless numbers, Professor Mahoney, has been a point of contention, as some Chinese economists point out, that China's unemployment rate does not include workers in rural areas. Do you think there should be a rethink of how unemployment data is calculated to better help the jobless in China?
You know, I think unemployment data is always a very sensitive political calculation. It's a very sensitive one in the United States, for example. We have many different measures. We have unemployment, we have underemployment, we have the idea that people who aren't seeking employment because they've given up, but they don't get counted. And then we often sometimes talk secretly about real unemployment rates and try to estimate what those are. So yeah, I think that it would be marvelous if you know, we could come to some consensus and transparency across the board on employment or unemployment rates. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, and certainly not in the midst of a crisis, even though I am sure that people in Beijing and Washington have some clear idea of the true picture.
All right, let's see what will happen. Now, I want to thank both of our guests, Professor Mahoney from Tennessee and Wang Cong, Chief Reporter at Global Times. Now, we will take a short break, and we'll come right back.